Okay, today we're going to be talking about the element of art, space, and here we're going to try to create the illusion of space or depth on a flat surface by using a one-point perspective. What we're going to do first is decide on our page where we want a horizon line. A horizon line is simply where the earth meets the sky. I don't like to put mine right in the middle of the page. I like to go slightly below or slightly over. So I'm going to put my little horizon line right here where the earth meets the sky. And then we're going to find a point on the horizon line where everything will vanish or seem to disappear. This is called a vanishing point. And again, I don't like to put mine right in the middle. I like to put it slightly off, and that's just my preference. So this is going to be my little vanishing point right here. Now I'm going to create a couple of diagonal lines. I think I'm going to make a railroad, and you could use a ruler if you like, or you could just use your eyes, but I want everything to disappear. So I'm taking my ruler and I'm setting it on the vanishing point and drawing a line that comes out. You see it looks like it gets smaller as it gets farther back. Now I'm going to make some horizontal lines here for the railroad track planks. And again, you can use your ruler. Or if you don't have a ruler, you can make a straight edge by folding a piece of paper or getting a piece of cardboard or something like that. And as I get farther back, I'm going to put these just slightly close together. As I get farther away, as I get closer to the vanishing point. That's a very important part of it. And I'll come back and add some details in a little bit to this. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is maybe a little road over here on this side of the railroad track. So I'm going to do a couple of more diagonal lines. And this is going to be a little road. Now if I have my road here, if I want the lines on the road, they also need to point to the diagonal line. And they're going to be kind of bigger as they're up here. And as they get closer to the vanishing point, they'll get a little smaller and closer together. When I have my ruler down, I can't really see what I'm doing, so I'm going to move my ruler a little bit. How's that? All right, I'm going to put a house over here. So what I want to start with is the front of the house. The front of the house is just going to be a little square, a little rectangle, like it's facing you. This is the front of the house. You know, we're just going to draw one of those stereotypical little houses with like the little triangle on the front of it. So here's the front of our house. Now the side of the house is where we use our vanishing point. We want the bottom corner. I want to line up the ruler here and here at the bottom corner and make sure it points to that. I'm going to do the same thing here. Line it up with the vanishing point. And the same thing with the top of the house. Line it up with the vanishing point. Now where we want the house to stop, we want to make our line parallel here with the side. And then this part of it parallel with this line. If you're not careful, your eyes will make you want to take that and zoom it out, and it'll be like at an angle too. You want to be real careful with that and keep it parallel with this line. And now we're going to draw a little door here. And the sides of the door are going to just be vertical, straight up and down, parallel with this. But the top of the door, we want it to look like it's receding, so it's going to also line up with our vanishing point. And add windows here. Again, it'll have vertical lines that are parallel with here, but the top and the bottom of the window, we want it to line up with the vanishing point. So you have to get that ruler or straight edge and put it there, especially if this is new to you. All right, now I'm going to draw on this side. I'm going to make me a little some trees, and just to make it look like it's in perspective, I'm drawing this line really softly because I'm going to erase it. This is going to be with the bottom of my trees, and here I'm going to say all my trees are the same size, so that's going to be with the top of my trees, the bottom of my trees. But the little trees, I'm just going to do some simple little trees so I don't, a little cypress, kind of like a Van Gogh tree. And remember, as we get farther back, each tree will be just a little bit smaller. If y'all remember when we talked about shapes, these are organic shapes, these are geometric shapes. Alrighty, so there's just some trees. They're going to get a little closer together as we get farther back. They're going to get a little smaller as we get farther back. Also, as you get farther back, you won't be able to see as many details. We'll come back and add a few details after a little bit. I think those two should have been a little closer together. Alrighty. And then I could come in and erase those lines that I used. That's why I drew them softly, so I could just come back and erase those lines. Those were just to help me keep them all in a row. These are some planted trees. They didn't grow naturally. They were planted there to look nice and pretty by the railroad tracks. But what I may want to do to give this some interest is maybe make a little pathway behind the trees. So I'm gonna take my ruler and behind the trees and just draw a little walkway. This is overlapping. It also helps when you overlap things to make it look like it's got a little depth. So there's a little walkway back there. And maybe even in front of the trees will give it something going on. I'm gonna do this real softly because I think I'm going to turn this into a little like riverway. One of the videos I watched had a little riverway. So I started with my 2 lines straight, diagonal, but I'm going to take and just give it a little curve. And then on this side, that same curve. And then I'll erase the original line. Now I have a little creek running alongside the railroad. And it's also in perspective. Alrighty. So we have a little house. Looks a little empty over here. So let's give it a fence. And we're gonna have the fence coming up beside the house. And it's gonna point towards the horizon line as well. Now the lines on the fence are going to be vertical. And again, as they get farther back, they'll be closer together. Okay, so let's make those look more like little fence posts instead of just a line. Even the bottom of these fence posts needs to be and even the tops of them. Alrighty. Now, if I want, I could have another window here or something. Maybe have some bushes down here behind these fence posts, but in front of that house. Again, since it's the front of the house, it's not going to have any diagonal lines, so we don't have to worry about that vanishing point. Maybe have a tree back here. Again, our horizon line also doesn't have to be a straight line. We could come now and maybe add some little mountains or something like that. Okay. On our train track, I'm just going to add another little line right here to give it the iron railings. One on this side as well. Okay, to make these look like they are, erase the vertical line inside of my iron railings. I'm sorry, the horizontal lines. Now, as you get closer to the viewer up here, you might want to press down a little harder, make it a little darker. As it gets farther away, it could get lighter. But up here, I want it to be nice and dark. Okay. On the inside of it, I'm gonna just make it a little darker again. This is to make it look like it's the little cleft, whatever you call it, on the iron railings. Like it's going down. And then on the front of our little wooden planks, also want to give it, connect these so it'll look like little wooden planks. I bet y'all was wondering why I let those come out over on the side. And then we're just gonna, up here, you're really gonna be able to see where it comes down. See how I did that? Same thing here. As we get farther back, of course, they start to get smaller. Okay. I think what I'm going to do now is maybe put another tree back here. I want it to be smaller than that tree. It's going to just give it a little bit of interest. And as we get closer up, let's give it a door handle, maybe a little door window. Start adding some details of grass. I want my fence to maybe have more than just a piece of wire. Let's make it look like wood and plank. There. Maybe add one more in the middle. Erase those vertical lines so we could see the wood, because this wood wouldn't be transparent. We wouldn't be able to see through it. Now we could start adding some details, some shadows. You have to decide where your light source is coming from. Remember when we talked about shading, we wanted to know where our light was coming from. Maybe I'll put another tree back here. You could add anything over here. You could add another building. You could add some cows. You can add whatever you want. I'm going to have my light coming from this side, so the cast shadows are going to be here. So I'm going to start out with some little cast shadows of my trees. And remember, if the light is coming from this side, then you're going to have your core shadows over here. Your highlights over here. Medium tones in the middle. It's one thing about art. You learn these things and you just build on them and build on them. You'll never forget what you learned when we were talking about value. You'll use that in all of your artworks now. When you start drawing, you'll be looking and you'll be noticing geometric shapes. You'll notice your organic shapes. And now you're learning about perspective. Just builds on one another. I'll speed this up now as I add these details. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing here is just pushing my shading, adding some grass. Even the grass will be more detailed as it gets farther away from the vanishing point. Cast shadows on everything, including the fence post. Make sure they're all going in the same direction. Here I'm adding some dots in between the wooden planks to make it look like the gravel that's often found on railroad tracks. More grass. The grass will get smaller as it gets farther away, just like anything else. Adding some shadows here in the water. I'll have to add some little waves to it as well. Here the light is coming from the right, so that side of the house wouldn't be as light as the front of it. Adding some shading to the mountains back there. They're farther away, so, and I'll even put some shadows from them as well. Here, working on the house a little more and trying to add a few waves to the water and some grass on that side. Some shading on the walkway over there. And just touching up all these lines to make sure they haven't got lost. Sometimes as you're drawing, your lines will start fading, your hand will rub it off, and you have to come back and make it a little darker. Here I'm making the grass up front a little more pronounced, and also trying to give it some more details. Here with the house, I'm adding some shingles on it now, making sure that they point to the vanishing point as well. It's very important. You want to keep everything in perspective. And now adding a little shading back here in the background where the mountains would probably cast a little shadow. And as I get farther away, I could actually just put a little shadows here and there for grass instead of trying to draw all the grass. We wouldn't be able to draw every blade of grass going back there. Here again, just enhancing the lines on the railroad track because they kind of got faded out, so I'm darkening them a little bit, adding some implied texture on the wood to make it look a little wooden. Remember we talked about implied texture? Even your clouds will get larger as they get farther away from that horizon line. So I don't want to draw those stereotypical little puffy clouds. I'm trying to draw some more realistic looking clouds and making them get smaller as they got closer to that horizon line. Adding another bush. And here's the final product. You can add anything you want to this. You could add another house, you could add some cows, you could add anything